Hello, food enthusiasts, and welcome to this episode of the FutureFoodCast, where we talk to food innovators, thought leaders, and all about the food space. Today, we have got with us Nicole Pavlica. She's the Vice President of Marketing with Hope Foods and also the founder of Girl Coaching and Consulting. Welcome to the podcast, Nicole.
Yes, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
We are so excited to do that. Now, you have, in the VP of Marketing role, you've been doing that for a while with Hope Foods. Can you tell us a little bit about what your focus is and how you got to where you are?
Certainly. So at Hope Foods, I oversee all of the marketing and innovation associated with the brand, as well as the marketing activation with a team of individuals who are absolutely stellar. And I've been in CPG foods for about 15 years. I started with Unilever and worked with Sargento, and then progressively throughout my career started working on more natural and innovative foods within the natural food space, progressively smaller as well, leading me to Hope Foods.
Yeah. Well, tell us about what Hope Foods does for those who don't know. Also, CPG, for our listeners who aren't familiar, is consumer packaged goods. And you can tell by the companies that she mentioned. But what's the focus of Hope Foods?
Hope Foods makes plant-based foods. So mostly hummus and classic American dips that are made plant-based.
Yeah, and so that fits right in with where you have been moving with your own personal interest. And I'm sure you love doing marketing with them. And
yes, I fell in love with Hope Foods maybe 10 years ago, earlier in my career when I was at Sargento. And it's miraculous that I'm here working now.
Oh, so this is like a dream job here. You're just excited because it's kind of come to fruition.
Well, I do want to love the foods that I'm marketing. I have often said, even within my own consulting business, I would never work on a brand that I didn't believe in. And I do wholeheartedly believe in Hope Foods.
Yeah. Well, they are certainly a leader in the category with their hummus and other products. I mean, if you look at their website, I think all of us are familiar with, or at least I was familiar with the products that they have. So for people who are looking for that category of product, certainly that is a great solution. But you also, they have a really unique, I don't want to say mission, but focus with their employees as well. And I really want to talk to our podcast listeners about, because I think it's unusual. And with what we've been through with COVID and just kind of the discussions about around mental health and employees and companies, you know, it's really an important thing. Can you describe a little bit about how they approach their employees' mental health?
Sure. Well, it started with a mission that has been part of the Hope brand and founder team since the beginning, is related to emotional and mental well-being, and making sure that employees and the community and the consumers at large feel supported within this space. And Hope has for many years supported both the community, its employees, and consumers with that mission. If you mentioned, if you go to our website, you'll see all of our products, but you'll also see a web page that's dedicated to self-care and education around this initiative. And as you mentioned, specifically related to employees, a few years ago, the employees were trained in mental health first aid response, including myself. And I'm a mental health first aid responder instructor as well, which is, it just shows the commitment that the founders and that the brand has to this initiative to help their employees spread this mission, both internally within the organization, but also within their communities.
Yeah, I did not even know. It was great to speak with you about, I didn't even know that there was a mental health first responder program certification. So I'd really like to, get that awareness out there. I'm so glad that you're helping us to understand that. But so anybody essentially can go and pursue some training in being a mental health first responder. And what does that involve?
Yeah, so if you go to mentalhealthfirstaid.org, you're most likely to be linked to your local chapter, in which you would be able to find an instructor that's certified to teach mental health first aid. And it's a day-long program where you or your colleagues or your leadership team would learn how to recognize a mental health crisis, from panic attacks to depression, to substance abuse, to other types of disorders, and develop the tools to be able to ask really clear, poignant questions to an employee or a family member or community member and help them seek the support that they need to address their issue.
That's great. I'm just very excited about that. And I think I appreciate you sharing that. And I love that Hope Foods has that as a part of their mission with not only with their employees, but they've got it on their website too, like you said, where you
Every
can
lid,
do
if
that.
you look under our lids, there's a positive message
Yeah.
associated with that. We had a great partnership with a company based out of Chicago called Hope for the Day.
Okay.
And we also have, through that connection and resource, there are links to other forms of support and information related to suicide prevention, as well as awareness and training. So
Right.
it's key to the brand's history, and we're choosing to take a very proactive approach. Self-care is one of the number one things that you can do to foster your own mental well-being, and that's the role that we're able to play with consumers and as well as within our four walls.
Yeah, and hear that a corporation not only makes it okay, but they're being proactive about having those mental health conversations. Even you told me having every employee have a conversation on the front end of their employment, just open-ended, so that they know that the resources are available to them with one of the mental health first responders at your company. So it's really
Yes.
important.
Well, and we're still a small company, just even after the acquisition with Savencia, and we're still able to have those one-on-one connections with employees. And I'm able to share with them that I'm an integrative nutrition health coach and the skills that I bring in addition to mental health well-being, and that they always have a safe place that they can reach out for emotional support, professional development support, et cetera, that may not be their direct manager, although of course we encourage that connection between manager and employee, but
Sure.
there's someone else, there's a cheerleader in the office for every individual here.
Yeah, and that's great. And Hope Foods really does give back not only to employees, but also to the public, because the mental health information is not the only free thing they have on their website. I think there's other, to your point, and we'll get into the integrative health situation in a minute, but the mix between your mental well-being and your gut health, how you're feeling, and all of that. There's also free information out there about.
There is, and it's exciting to see that there's so much more information, even in the last couple of years, about the connection between mental health and digestive health. And there are studies that show 70 to 85% of our serotonin, which is, if you think the happiness hormone, is regulated by our digestive system. And it speaks to the importance of really caring about what you're eating and what you're putting in your body so that all of your organs can function at their greatest. And so that we're able to feel as good as we possibly can from a physical standpoint. And then from there, we're able to layer on additional tools and skills to help us manage the stress of life.
Yeah, which plays right into you founding your own girl coaching and consulting with the
Yes.
integrative health piece. So share with us how all this comes together for you, because Hope Foods is very supportive of your work in that area as well.
Yes, it is. It began when I was working at Boulder Brands, who was a leading provider in plant-based butters and alternative meats, as well as even Evol, for example, Glutino, et cetera. And I became very passionate about better understanding nutrition and its role and how we feel. And I decided to pursue certification through IIN, which is the leading company in integrative nutrition health. And from there, I was able to study the most popular diets and philosophies around eating. And it really sparked my interest in this connection. And when I was exposed to the content within this training, I felt, wow, everyone should have access to this information. And how can I make this information accessible, but also digestible for an actionable,
Nicole.
yes, an actionable for more and more people. And that's what started my coaching and consulting business. And most of the time, clients would reach out to me because they were having weight issues or struggling to build a physical well-being practice into their lives. And because of my integrated training, we could look at all aspects that drive happiness and satisfaction and identify what are the barriers to being successful in a physical health and wellness plan and vision. And it's been an incredible journey, and it's something of continuous learning, but it's wonderful to be able to connect with consumers and say, and clients to say, all right, well, how much water are you drinking? Let's just get back to the basics. Let's make sure that your body has what it needs to function at its best. And then from there, let's layer in some self-care practices and some tools and techniques to help you manage. And of course, there are situations that I'm not trained to respond to, but I can help and foster that connection with professionals that may be better suited to handle a particular situation.
Yeah.
And so I was able to take the information that I have learned over the years, and synthesize that into some very simple, easy to follow tools that are now hosted on HopeFoods.com Have Hope webpage.
Yeah, so this is just a great marriage of missions between Hope Foods and you
And myself, absolutely.
Yeah.
I had been thinking, I'm going to leave CPG and I'm going to pursue this coaching 100% of the time. And two things. One, I really missed being in food, and then the natural foods industry in particular. I love this work. And when Hope Foods reached out to me and I learned about their mission and their connection to mental well-being and the role that it plays in their organization, but also their innovation, I thought, wow, this is the universe's way of saying, Nicole, this is how you can take the learnings that you've been longing to make free and available to as many people as possible under this really incredible brand and through their platforms. So it was such a gift.
Yeah, and I think, and maybe a lot of our listeners out there aren't aware of the strong connection that our diet has. I think there's a lot more awareness out there, but to your point, Hope Foods allowed you to elevate that to a whole new level just via their reach is so much bigger than you could get just on your own, and just to be able to put the information out there. And today also just sharing, because I think a lot of people just aren't aware of how strong the connection is. They might discount when they make bad choices or less than optimal choices for their health. It's so interesting, Nicole. I've talked to people about in the food space, and I've come to the conclusion, I think people feed their dogs and their cats and some of their pets better. They think about that more. They're buying the holistic, raw food and all of that for their pets. But then when it comes to feeding themselves, they don't have that same discernment. They're going for the, high sugar, high fat, high calorie choices all the time, and not realizing that has ramifications. And you talked about weight. That's only one ramification, how you're feeling, how you're thinking, how you can react to your environment and navigate through life is really affected, right?
It is, absolutely. And one of the exercises that I went through, but have also encouraged others to do, is to pay attention for a week to the foods that you reach for as a snack, and to note what time it is, what you chose, but what's happening around you. How do you feel? So for example, and what a lot of people find is that they're very well committed to their health and well-being goals in the morning. And so they tend to choose healthier choices in the morning. But as the day continues and new stressors are introduced, we reach for the salty snack in the afternoon. And oftentimes we might be feeling a little bit salty ourselves, or we reach for that sweet treat, the cookie or the handful of M&Ms. So part of it is driven by a physiological need, which is an energy drop, but sometimes it could be also following a negative situation, maybe a frustrating interaction with someone at work or some stress, and we're longing for some sweetness and some comfort in our lives. And when you keep track of the snacks that you're choosing and your emotional state for a course of a week, you'll start to see some patterns, that there's a correlation between what you're choosing and how you're feeling emotionally. And then to take it a step further is to know, what is the feeling of satisfaction or dissatisfaction that occurs an hour or two later after your choice. And oftentimes, those foods that satisfy us emotionally in the moment are very detrimental. They can create inflammation in their body. Sugars can create inflammation, which creates pain, which can make us more agitated in the way that we're interacting with other people. And we're just not mindful enough to see those connections and to realize the longer term, even a few hours later, ramifications of our choices that might seem good in the moment.
Yeah. Good word of advice for somebody who wants to make a change in this area and doesn't even know where to start. Nicole, that's a great idea. A bit of a food diary, I guess I'll call it. Just get a pad of paper or a blank piece of paper or a piece of paper off your printer and start to write things down. Doesn't have to be formal, but if you can keep track of connecting with yourself on what you're eating. But then the important part is how do you feel right then? Are you angry, sad, mad, happy, and what you ate, and then keep track, an hour or 2 hours later about that. I know caffeine is a big contributor to some challenges, and a lot of people have sleep issues and aren't realizing that they're consuming too much caffeine or maybe an energy drink. Our younger population is very popular with them, but maybe later in the day, and that ends up disrupting your whole sleep pattern, and which then starts that vicious cycle. So
absolutely, and sleep is very critically important to emotional and mental well-being as well. And we are generally sleep deprived, and we're also protein obsessed. And we are protein obsessed and caffeine obsessed because we're energy deficient. And it's really driven by the lack of high quality sleep. And in addition, the caffeine that we may be consuming, it's also our habits that we have in the evening. I'm also guilty of crawling in bed and maybe spending some time on social media, and all of a sudden my creativity kicks in and I'm thinking and I'm not in a sleep state. So let alone the screen itself, goofing with my circadian rhythms, I'm also very stimulated. And then we have a hard time falling asleep. And I do have clients that say, oh, I can't fall asleep. And I start with, well, what's your bedtime routine? And we forget when we have our own children, there's a process. There's dinner, there may be homework, there's often a bath to soothe and calm the body. There's books, cuddling. Nighttime, lights are out, and kids sleep. They sleep really well. But if you have older kids and your kids are on social media or connecting with friends or watching TV late, they also struggle. They have the same challenges that we have.
Yeah, it's addictive, and all of us find ourselves, if we're not aware, like you're saying, if you're not paying attention, you might not even connect those two things. So I think kind of the message of today is just making that step towards being aware of what's happening with you and how you're thinking and how you're feeling. And that's great. We have talked about some really fun topics today that are related to food, and they are directly related to food, but it's not about how we grow it, manufacture it, etc. Hope Foods does a great job with their quality plant-based food offerings that they have, but it's more about how we're consuming them and how we're thinking about that and what choices we're making in the food space. I mean, everybody eats, and we all have these choices to make. We have talked about a lot of things today, Nicole, but what else would you like to share with our audience that you haven't shared with them yet?
The one thing I'd like to share especially is that mental well-being is treatable. And I think many of us have struggled, especially over the course of the pandemic and the long periods of isolation that many of us have felt off and on during this time frame. And the beautiful, or the silver lining, if you will, of COVID is that it's opened up conversations. The stigma around mental well-being is reduced. And the most important thing that I can share with any listener out there today is that many people struggle with either short or long-term mental challenges and emotional well-being issues. And it's absolutely treatable, and that there's hope.
No pun intended again. Hope.
No, it's a powerful word. It is the best word to describe it. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. There's optimism. There's reason to believe that things can get better, and they will, with work and the right support.
Yes. Thank you so much for that. And thank you to
Yes.
Hope Foods too for their mission and elevating this conversation, and for you today sharing it with us, Nicole. I especially want to thank our sponsor of the Future Foodcast, Farm to Plate, which is providing the future food ecosystem today. If you want to know more, you can go to farmtoplate.io and check that out. Thanks again for being here. We'll see you on our next episode.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Future Foodcast. Future Foodcast is powered by Farm to Plate, the leading food blockchain platform. Subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts to stay up to date with the very latest innovations in the food industry.